And sweaty.
So I was watching some clips recently that have gone viral, and I was inspired to share this with you. The mother of nursing is called Florence Nightingale. Florence Nightingale, legendary British nurse, highly honoured, wrote beautiful work. In fact, I've actually read all her books, and I encourage you to check out her work. She was very much about hygiene at a time when people would just focus on germs and not focusing on the hygiene of the body, the hygiene of the environment. But there's two basic principles. If we forget about hygiene for a moment, but I will tell you, you've probably heard of naturopaths around the world. Well, that word was actually invented and trademarked in 1904. Before the word naturopath, it was actually called natural hygiene, or being a natural hygienist. So I just want to tell you the two fundamental principles now of natural medicine. Now, the first one is elimination. So I'm going to give it a pillar, like a Parthenon, like in ancient Greek. So you've probably seen those Roman Colosseums. So the first pillar is called elimination. Elimination. Now, any competent naturopath, integrated doctor, whatever the scope of practice is, but someone who's practicing natural medicine, there's 4 elimination channels that we're taught to move from. Now, the first of these 4 is the bowels, or the intestinal tract, or the digestive system. So this is the first thing that a competent person is taught to clear. It's roughly a 5-meter tube. If you unravel it, it's the size of a tennis court. It's a honeycomb shape, the bowel. The second one is the kidneys, or the urinary system. It's technically the urinary system. Urinary system. I'll call it the kidneys for short. This is the kidneys, the bladder, the urethra. The third is the respiratory system. The respiratory system has got 2 exits. The respiratory system, we breathe out and we blow out. So later on some of these tapes, I'm going to teach you about how to breathe effectively. Now, I'm sure you've heard of these. In fact, in yoga at the moment, there's coffee breath and whiskey breath, and there's different labels, like in box breathing if you've got a personal trainer. But we're going to go through this succinctly: how to breathe, where to breathe, how to breathe from your diaphragm, how to find it, how not to use your pelvic floor in a bad way. The fourth and final elimination channel, although people argue that there is more, is the skin. Again, the skin's got 2. The skin you sweat or you shed. Snakes shed their skin one go. Humans shed their skin in sort of little particles, one off. In fact, most dust, they say, is dead skin cells. So that's your 4 elimination channels. Now, here's a few wild cards, honourable mentions that didn't make it to the list. Now, part of your elimination system here is your liver. Your blood's going through your liver every 5 to 8 minutes, and the blood pulls all the toxins out through the liver, through the gallbladder, into the bowel. And then the other honourable mention would be the lymphatic system. Some people call this the 5th system. Your lymphatic system is like an offshoot of your blood. It's somewhat promoted or stimulated by breathing, a deep diaphragmatic breathing, which we'll go into another time. Now, the second main pillar in natural medicine, there's probably about 5, but the second main one is nutrition. So, you've probably heard of garbage in, garbage out with computers. So here we'll say garbage out. In this case, we want to say nutrition in. But even the best nutrition will become garbage. There's something called the fermentation cycle. Some people call it the carbon cycle, where you start off healthy cells and it becomes bacteria, yeast, mold, fungus. You may have even seen some of this floating around the internet. With nutrition, the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm not anti-pharmaceutical, some of my best friends are medical doctors, even though I'm a naturopath, but it's $1 trillion industry, as is my industry, our industry of nutraceuticals. So everyone is trying to sell you something. So I want to tell you a couple of things. In America, it's prescribed like a drug. In other countries, not so much. But the 2 things that you don't hear about, because people can't charge you for it, is oxygen and water. I'll just say O2. Some people think our planet's atmosphere once was 35% oxygen. They even think maybe the creatures grew a lot bigger. Now, if the atmosphere was oxygen, things would have been very flammable. So we have to be very, very careful with that. But now, the first thing is, this is why breathing is important. I'll tell you a little secret. We're driven by the desire to breathe out, not the desire to breathe in. This is why a lot of Indian and yoga and Ayurvedic, that's Indian natural medicine type natural breathing, is driven by breathing out first before in, because we've got no sensor for oxygen. When oxygen drops, we don't notice it, but when carbon dioxide increases internally, we're driven to expire, then we inspire. We call it to respirate. In fact, most holy books, it doesn't matter if it's Christian, Islamic, Judaism, whatever your school of thought is, if you look at the Christian Bible, it says God breathed the breath of life into Adam. This is the life force, the spirit. They have different words for this life force. Sometimes in Asian tradition they call it the chi, or in India they call it the prana. But this is the life force, the breath, the energy. So we must start with oxygen. And if you're fatigued, this is where we start. Now, after water, there's another 3 or 4 that we'll go into, particularly when people look at live blood analysis, and we'll have a look at that on some of the other tape sets going forward.
Well,
Very good.